Welcome back to the continuing adventures of the monad. In our deliberations about the 6 steps that every disciple goes through to construct the Antahkarana, we have discussed the outcome focusing on intention and the aggregation of mental substances in a ring pass knot. We then went on to acknowledge the importance of the emotional envelope and its capacity to visualize the whole scheme of building the Antahkarana. Without this blueprint, nothing would be constructed. Once visualized, the next step the disciple must undertake is the projection of the matter accumulated on the mental plane through the power of will to direct a beam of light matter towards the monad, who is residing on the margins of the third triad, 43-1. All these 3 stages are works undertaken by the persona. There remains to be discussed 3 further steps. However, these steps are an expression of a response from higher levels, and we simply do not have precise enough mental constructs to adequately describe them. That has never stopped me before, so here goes. Step 4 is termed Invocation and Evocation. Starting with invocation, this process is based on intention, visualization, and projection. These 3 steps have carefully been undertaken by the disciple, and by now a reasonably good idea of what is transpiring should be known to the student. The disciple has engaged in a dual modality of living, which encompasses a spiritual life as well as scientific, technical, and esoteric work. It is therefore safe to say that the disciple has been engaged in invocative work. This has not gone unnoticed by higher levels of consciousness, and the disciple is recognized as a point of invocative tension. In just the same way that the disciple had collected light matter into a ring pass knot in its mental envelope. This type of tension now resides as a living reservoir of energy within the 3 envelopes of the disciple. The totality of the being of the disciple is now projected into the surrounding environment through the use of willpower and the sounding of the word or phrase of power. This potency surrounding the disciple has a radius of influence and is now sufficiently strong enough to call out a response from the spiritual triad. Think of this as a beam of light going forth from the disciple through the Antahkarana, which has been constructed by the disciple. Along this beam can flow the life of the soul and persona. Getting poetic, we can now say that the Father, aka the monad, working through the threads of the Antahkarana, goes forth to meet the Son, which is now the soul, enriched by the persona, which itself has a life in the 3 worlds of the first triad. The monad beams energy down in response to the call from the soul/persona, which eventually makes contact with a projection of energy coming from the lower 2 triads. In this manner, the Antahkarana is built. This can be summarized by saying that the tension of the lower evokes the attention of the higher. This, in a nutshell, is the process of invocation and evocation. What has occurred is a gradual approach from both divine aspects, the lower and the higher. Slowly, the vibration of both these poles becomes stronger until a moment of contact is reached and synthesis occurs. Do not mistake this as a contact between the soul and the persona, which is the goal of the average aspirant. This is a contact between the fused soul and persona energies with the energy of the monad, working through the spiritual triad. This is not a moment of crisis, but rather a realization of liberation. It is a recognition that the disciple is themselves the way. The disciple has reached a point where there is no longer a sense of personality and soul or ego and form, but simply one. This unity functions on all planes as a point of spiritual energy arriving at the sphere of planned activity by means of the path of light. There, I had an attempt at describing it, with help from other minds. But what is really being described is indescribable. It just has to be lived. But we do need clues as to what we are supposed to be getting up to. Hence, this series of presentations. When the evolution of the monad reaches this stage on its journey through the cosmic physical kingdom, there is no form attracting the monad outwards into manifestation. There is no way that the call of matter or form can evoke a response from the monad. We think of our connections with our loved ones and feel drawn to them. When you get to this stage of consciousness, the connection is one of unity with all, and it is the pull of the plight of humanity as a whole that elicits a response that can be made via the completed Antahkarana. The monad is now free to cross the rainbow bridge and descend at will in order to serve humanity and carry out the will of Shambhala. This is the final consummation of this long, arduous process of building a bridge. The monad has gradually approached the soul and the persona across the chasm of the separating mind. Reflect on the term separating when used in conjunction with the word mind. The mind tends to separate and categorize. Slowly it learns to synthesize, but still it sees things discretely. When the bridge unites the two halves of the mind, the observer sees the truth, and after the second death at the I-4, the soul is jettisoned as the developing consciousness realizes there is no separation in the world of creation. We have reached the final stage, where the projection from the monad meets the projection the disciple has made, and we can move into the fifth and sixth stages of the process of the construction of the Antahkarana. These stages are called 5 stabilisation and 6 resurrection. The bridge is now built. The thin strands of light matter have been woven into a strong and stable tool, capable of being used by the evolving monad. The construction of this bridge is the only game in town. There is no other way that an initiate can come to know the one whom he knows to be themselves. We need to pause there and not get carried away by suddenly meeting up with our monad. Yes, this is us, but the level of consciousness active within it has been hard won by the persona and the soul. The monad is the source of energy that has driven the whole process, but the waking up of this primary atom has been occurring in the triad structure located in the cosmic physical kingdom. But let's stick with the poetry and say that the disciple ascends in full consciousness into the sphere of monadic life. The disciple is resurrected from the dark cave of the personality into the blazing light of divinity. There, that sounds very uplifting. What we are saying is that the disciple has finally arrived at subplane 43.1, where Christ Maitreya hangs out. The disciple now is no longer part of humanity, nor is it part of the hierarchy, but belongs to the company of those whose will is consciously divine and who are the custodians of the plan. They are responsive to the impressions of Shambhala and are under the direction of the heads of the hierarchy. Okay, so we have got to the end of the journey to construct the Antahkarana. Is that all we need to know? Absolutely not. We need to come back to reality and focus on the way ahead. This is a personal journey for each of us, and there is a lot to take into consideration. See you in the next presentation. Thank you.